Hello again. Now, when I talk about this, sometimes people think, oh, it's a bit ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous. And some people really struggle with it, and it does have quite a negative impact on them. But before we talk about it, I'm going to suggest you do an experiment on yourself. It doesn't hurt. The next time you're feeling a bit down or frustrated or angry or anxious, that kind of thing, what I want you to do is to force a smile on your face and try to make it as a genuine smile as you can. But the thing is, you've got to keep it there for a while, 30 seconds if you can. So it's probably not a good thing to do, for example, if you've just been pulled over by the police for speeding and you're feeling a bit anxious. But if you get a moment on your own to try this, then give it a go. And what most people say is that after a while, the negative kind of emotion and feelings will dissipate a little bit. It's a good experiment to do because it'll give you an insight into how vulnerable you are to the negative aspects of this, but also how open you are to the positive side. So being able to, remove some negative feeling and take a break from it by some kind of physical action is obviously a positive. But unfortunately, it also works the other way because the body does kind of backfeed physical to mental, mental to physical, if you want to look at it that way. Now, it's a good idea to have some idea or insight into why this happens or how it happens. And that might seem like an unusual phrase to use, but quite often in high performance, what we'll do is we'll look at a situation and we'll say, there's probably 3 different explanations or ways of looking about what's causing this. And so we'll choose the one that empowers us and helps us most to resolve the issue or make happen what we want to make happen. So a good way of thinking about this one is, for example, if you were privileged enough to hear one of my world-class staggering dad jokes, what you'd do is you hear me tell you the joke, your brain would process that, you'd realize that you've just heard one of the funniest things you've ever heard in your whole life. And that would kick off a whole load of chemicals, and the chemicals would in turn kick off some physical things, one of which would be smiling. But of course, in the case of my dad joke, rolling around on the floor and laughing hysterically will be another one. But do you see how that works? So when you smile while you're feeling negative, that means you're doing a physical thing that doesn't fit with your emotional state. Now, if you've done one of our workshops or one of our online courses, you'll know that the brain doesn't like this kind of thing, even if it's one belief and a message coming in, for example. So, if you've got very low self-esteem and somebody pays you a compliment, that causes a problem because the message you're receiving doesn't match what you believe. So you'll come up with all kinds of creative ways to not accept the compliment. Okay, and it's similarly when physical things don't match mental things. So if you're feeling down and you smile, the brain says, hang on, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. And if you keep the smile going in the end, the only way the brain can resolve this dissonance is to dissipate some of the negative thoughts. So this is really empowering. But it does work negatively. So I'll give you another example. While I was overseas recently, I played a bit of golf as I went around. I'm not going to talk about golf particularly. And if you roll up to a golf club as a visitor and said, hey, can I play? They quite often put you with other people, which is great. It's a really good way to meet people. And so I finished up playing with this couple. And they're really nice people. But the guy on the first hole, the first tee, hits a shot. It was a pretty good shot. It went a fair distance. It just rolled off the edge of the fairway, which is the really short grass, into some grass that was perfectly fine. But his physical reaction was crazy. It was like, and loads of huffers and puffers, we call them, okay? And I remember seeing somebody drop something in a cafe and they just went, like this. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever let off steam. This kind of every cloud has a silver lining is ridiculous. Some clouds are just full of clouds. Smile through adversity can actually be really mentally unhealthy. Sometimes it's good to let off a bit of steam. But if you do this kind of habitually, then what you're doing, of course, is you're feeding back that whatever is happening is a disaster. Now, self-talk, thought and talk plays a part, because we will tell people, and again, if you've done one of our courses, you'll know this, your reaction isn't in proportion to what's happened, it's in proportion to what you tell yourself about what's happened. And that's all to do with explanatory style and stuff that we don't have time to talk about. But it's also partly the feedback loop that you get from your physical reactions, okay? So if you're like this guy who spent 4 hours going, oh, God, and even when, interestingly, when he hit really good shots, he didn't go, yeah, he just went, oh. You know, there was virtually no reaction, but the negative was like crazy. So you want to really watch this. If you do that, if you're a huffer and puffer habitually, it's really not good for you at all. And I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts, hear about, you know, how that experiment went for you. And also, you know, if even if you don't do it yourself, if you notice it in other people, because it's out there and it's not good. Okay, talk to you soon.